All right, you guys, welcome to the Missions Blab. We are excited to be talking about this great conversation today, money and the global worker. And Andrew's actually in Liberty University. Sorry, Andrew, why don't you go ahead and tell us again where you're at and what you're doing?
Yeah, we're here in the Jerry Falwell Library called a Tea Culture Break. So throughout the Global Focus Week, we'll have different culture breaks. Today is Monday, obviously, and we're doing tea. So we have tea from the area of the world they grew up in. So we have England, Turkey, India, China, and Morocco.
All right.
So yeah, they're all just sitting on the floor on carpet.
Oh, nice.
Awesome.
Drinking tea.
So have you got a chance to test out the different teas? Which one's your favorite so far, buddy?
So that's what I did. I'm a big fan of
Indian chai?
The
okay.
Indian chai.
You didn't get any like Chinese green leafy tea in between your teeth or anything? Or you have filters probably?
Yeah, they've been filtering out all the leaves. So
awesome. So
yeah, that's what's
so you're
going on
at
here.
Liberty University, Global Focus Week. Just as an overview, maybe Craig or Andrew, either one of you, give us an overview. How many students are there at Liberty, and what is the Global Focus Week all about?
Sure, we have about 12,000 students residentially, and twice a year, once during the fall semester, once during the spring semester, we do Global Focus Week, where we turn our attention to the world around us, and we talk about ways that we bring the good news around the world. We invite a number of partner organizations to come and represent their work on campus. And so when Andrew turned the camera around, down in our lower terrace level, there are a number of displays set up by different organizations that have come. And so students can just come and interact with these representatives and mobilizers to find out about the opportunities around the world, different target people groups, different locations around the world, and just try to find a fit either for a short-term experience, an internship, or a long-term career. We're very much involved as the CGE, the Center for Global Engagement, in finding ways for our students to engage the world with some sort of a clear path, whether it's exclusively sharing the good news or whether it's in companionship with another type of work that will grant them access in a country that may not be as welcome, just simply as a messenger.
Sure. Well, that sounds really exciting. I'm glad to see Andrew. You're like the little glimpse into what's really actually going on there.
Andrew's a real life student, senior. Andrew, why don't you tell them a little bit about what your experience is?
Yeah, this is my fourth year at Liberty. So I'm in the School of Music with a specialization in classical guitar.
Did you?
I grew up in Southeast Africa, in Mozambique. That's a little bit about me.
Very cool. So you would consider yourself what, a TCK, third culture kid? Awesome. Very cool. A topic that's very dear to my heart, as my daughter also is a TCK. And well, she's 3, of course. So you got a little head start on her. But by the way, let me just go ahead and introduce myself. Craig, maybe you could as well. And then I want to have Mike introduce himself as well. Steve's not on camera today, but my name is David Joannis. I'm the founder and president of Within Reach Global. It's a nonprofit organization that's reaching unreached people groups, specifically in the 1040 window. And you can check that out at withinreachglobal.org. By the way, this replay is going to be available at the same link. So if you are watching either this live and you miss one of the links or something, you could always watch the replay to grab the links that we're going to be talking about today by Craig, by Andrew, by Mike, or Steve hovering in the background there. I also blog at davidjoannis.com. All things international global focus for specifically unreached people groups, just inspiring people to use their gifts and skills for how God designed them to impact the nations. And so, yeah, that's me in a nutshell. And Craig, why don't you introduce yourself, since you're there at Liberty as well? Maybe it'll make a little bit more sense for those of people who are watching.
Yeah, sure. I'm Craig Osterhus. I spent 3.5 years in Haiti in the early 90s with my wife, and that's kind of our experience. She grew up in Haiti as a missionary kid, and so we were able to go back and kind of serve and get to have some impact there. And since 2013, I've been working in the Center for Global Engagement. I've been involved in short-term experiences as well as helping global workers do what they do and help coming alongside them in some financial ways to support them through some grant scholarship programs that are initiated here at Liberty. So we can talk about those later on, but I'm very excited about the team that I get to work with, especially with TCKs here at Liberty. We have at least 300 TCKs that we're on a regular basis. So we are excited for these amazing students and what they bring to our university. We also have a very large international student population. We probably have 90 countries represented on campus here.
Oh, awesome.
And so we're serious about the world, and this is a great place to serve in the world.
So that's for a guy like Andrew, who probably speaks multiple languages, can get by and squeeze into different cultures with ease. And that's really exciting. I wanted Mike, a.k.a. Missions Mike. Whenever you say his handle, you have to say it with a lower, deeper voice. Andrew won't have a problem with that. Mike, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, buddy?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Mike Falkenstein, and I direct a ministry called China Resource Center, and we've been serving the growth and the development of the church in rural China, primarily through rural Bible distribution and rural church building projects. And so about a year ago, I started a personal website, mikefalkenstein.com, with the intent to what I call mobilize Christians towards the Great Commission, which is really kind of, I think it's just a accumulation of 20-some years of being in ministry and just kind of this perspective that I've gotten from a lot of Christians, which is, Mike, this Great Commission work is great for you. For me, I give you money, and that's kind of as far as this needs to go for me. And so as I went back and looked at the scriptures again, it sure didn't seem like there was any exemption for anyone who calls themselves a Christian. And so kind of my message is that the Great Commission is a command for us all. And, we, of course, are not all called to go overseas. But as I often say, you can find Great Commission fulfillment by reaching out to people in your neighborhood, right? And being intentional and living missionally. So that's a little bit about me. And I'm really excited about this topic because kind of the financial parts of ministry for me have always been a challenge, and it's hard work. So I hope to get some pointers, and I'm looking forward to a good conversation.
Awesome. Yeah. On that topic, Craig and I and Steve in the background there, I think he's downstairs at Liberty University there. We're talking about this topic because wouldn't you say that you guys, this is something that we all are going to deal with. Those of us who either go overseas long-term, targeting some specific people group, perhaps some sort of ministry, or for those, like Mike was saying, it's not the Great Commission. It's not the Great Suggestion. I'm sorry. It's the Great Commission. And we do have a part to play financially. That plays a part of it because we all know Facebook likes don't pay the bills. So, Craig, you had a bunch of really good questions. And do you want me to start putting some of those up, or you wanted to move a different direction with this first?
Let's, I think if we started, first of all, I want to say thanks to Andrew for signing in today and to giving us a report on the stuff that's going on. Did we forget anything, Andrew, as far as what's going on down there?
Yeah. Doing great.
Oops, he's a little choppy there.
So
Yeah. Okay. Your audio is coming through a little bit low.
yeah.
So I know that you probably want to mingle around there and kind of get a feel for what is going on and whatever. But thanks for signing in. We'll hear from you again probably in the next couple of days, I think, and we want to see what the progress is on other activities there during the Global Focus Week. Thanks, Andrew.
Yep. Yeah, man. So
Sounds
if, by the
great.
way,
Looking
if you're going to be
forward
on
to
for
it.
within the next hour, feel free to pop back in, give us a little closer glimpse of what an actual cup of tea from India looks like, and maybe spark some interest in people who want to move overseas. But yeah, if
I
not today,
will.
we'll definitely see you over the next few days because Andrew's there at Liberty. We have scheduled blabs for the next 4 days, 5 including this one. So yeah, good to meet you, Andrew, and look forward to connecting again.
Nice.
All right, man. All right.
Yeah.
Well,
All right, you too.
Yeah, the question
later.
that we could probably start out with, and as I was thinking through the blabs throughout the week, it seemed like a good place to start would be, what does the Bible say?
Yeah.
And are there particular places in the Bible that gives us counsel about things like raising funds from other people in order to do this type of work, or supporting ourselves, with while we're doing this type of work, things like they've been called tent making.
Yes.
Does the Bible give us guidance, and if so, where are those passages, and what can we understand? Maybe we just look at a couple of those together. Who wants to take that? I have an idea of one that we direct our students to when they're doing some short-term trips, but let's see what you guys had to say first.
Yeah, I'll just chime in and kind of set the tone. Again, this topic of financial sending, or financial fundraising. It's something that I think, first of all, as we'll see in Scripture, that it's obvious that both Moses and Nehemiah, Jesus and Paul came to the church asking for support. Jesus did not particularly say that outright, although there were women who were supporting him. But I think the biggest issue when we talk about missions and money is, do we need to kill the giants in our own mind? Do we sometimes feel more like beggars than we do advocates? For those of us who are going to go overseas and be a career, long-term global worker, okay, you need to have a team of vision partners. And I'm not talking about the plate that's passed around. Someone drops $100 in. Wow, they just did their duty for the week and see you next Sunday. No, we're talking about a partnership, a relationship of vision partners who are passionate about the same thing. Always reminds me of William Carey's initial call to India. He said, yes, I'll be willing to go down into the gold mine of souls, but you must hold the rope. And I see that holding of the rope from above, that lowering down into the gold mine of souls from below, and it's a true Christian partnership. But I did have a link here as well. I could make it available as we continue to talk specific scriptures that address this issue. And Mike, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I would think very similar to what you said. Obviously, it's just easy for those of us who are raising our support monthly to, I mean, it's just I guess there's several things. Number one, it's a big job, especially if you've got, not just your own support, but then like for us, every Bible distribution event that we do, that's another $40,000 we raise, and then every church building that we help to build is another 40 to 60,000. And so, I mean, if you're going to be, you just can't have that. Yeah, it really has to be a partnership relationship and I think that's the key, right? Finding people and asking God to give you people who really have a heart for what you're doing. And, I found over the years that if you find those people, it's not a begging situation. It's, hey, we all have a part to play in this. And, God's blessed you in some ways, and God's blessed me in others, with the in China stuff. And, Yeah, I guess the other thought that I had, and this is something that hopefully we'll get to talk about eventually in the Blab for later, but I guess the other main topic on my heart as it relates to money and missions right now is kind of this idea of I don't know if I would call it tent making, but certainly it seems like there's more. Actually, even some of we've got a large group of donors in Houston, Texas, for example, and that's all these oil and gas money guys, and they have funds for sure, but they're even beginning to ask, and they're beginning to come together and say, boy, if we helped Mike start some kind of a little business of some kind, that would help him be more self-supporting so that more of the money could go, on the ground. I think, David, you and I have talked about this a little bit in terms of, you'd sent me that link on the charity water deal, and 100% of all their stuff goes directly to the field. And, I guess I'm kind of in this process right now of trying to sort of pray through that and figure out ways that, if there's something that would be complementary in kind of how I spend my time and whatnot. I guess just for the reason that this process of fundraising is such a load to carry. It's sort of like I was meeting with another ministry leader here in Denver, and he said that it's like he's sort of likened it to every year we have to go through the process of painting the Golden Gate Bridge. I mean, it's that kind of work. And then you get to the end, and it's the end of the year, and you've finished it, and then you look at the bridge again, and for the next year, you've got to do it all over again, right?
Ouch.
And and just year after year of that, it's a lot. So I guess I agree with you.
Sorry, what was that, Craig?
Well, you're making me feel tired just by talking about it that way. Yeah, I'm wearing out.
On a more positive note, I totally agree. It is a load, and you look back over the thing and see, wow, I need to restart over and need new vision partners. However, I would encourage those who are watching live, for those of you who feel called overseas, for those of you who are having some sort of tug on your heart, maybe you're downstairs at Liberty University, maybe you're watching the replay from the comfort of your own living room. This aspect of the global worker who needs, obviously, finances to do what God has called him to do should not scare you off from pursuing the call of God in obedience. And, we've been blessed that every single year more people come on board. Have there been times of lack? For sure. And just to look through the Bible and see a few different places. I mean, if you're going to talk about Moses, David, Hezekiah, Nehemiah, Old Testament stuff, there's a number of references to maybe I shouldn't call it fundraising as much as supporting local ministers who are doing some sort of ministry. But I know, Craig, you have a number of different thoughts as well. I see Paul requesting funds for his journeys, his global journeys. Mm-hmm. And what are your thoughts on specific scriptures? For me, I think the biggest preface for this whole thing is don't be scared away from what is God calling you to do because you are unable to raise the money or whatnot. God will provide.
Right. Yeah. We were directing students to 2 Corinthians 8 and 9 as the main scriptures that talked about how you build a relationship with people.
Yes.
And invite them to participate. It's not as much the beggar asking for a handout as much as it is mm-hmm. an invitation extended to you to participate in something that is meaningful. And
yes,
so
I like that.
The other side is, of course, I was involved in Haiti, which is a country that is a very different context than what maybe some of you guys have experienced in urban Southeast Asia. And some of the fallout of a lot of, funding going into the country not being, handled responsibly or setting up a dependency situation can create some complications, and it can actually create a lot of static when it comes to the mission, the types of things that you're trying to accomplish there.
Yes.
And so,
Hence the reason books like When Helping
there-
Hurts are written, right?
Yeah. So, what did Paul set up as the rule in Thessalonians? If a man will not work, neither shall he eat. This is the same one that was commending people, in different contexts for giving and contributing so that the work could, and supplying people's needs. But he's also saying, if you're not willing to do your part, then you just don't deserve to be catered to. Even if these folks were caught up in an early eschatological vision of, like the end is coming soon, so we've got to be ready for it, we got to be prepared for it, we got to put aside this daily routine life like work in order to be totally focused on these heavenly goals. No, slow down. Make yourself, a quiet ambition, work with your hands so that you're not going to be dependent on anybody. There's a responsibility that we all have. And we've just got to be wise, I guess, as we approach these things, not presuming on others, but not setting up dependency in the process of inviting people to participate in a way, that in real financial needs.
And it's a balancing act, because those who are called to go overseas should focus on the thing that God has called them to do, not get sidetracked by constant, fundraising efforts. However, going back to your original statement, this is about relationship. When I'm back in the States, I come sometimes for, I've been living overseas in China for the last 17 years now, in Thailand for 3. For the last 20 years of my life, a little bit more than half my life, I've been living cross-culturally in Southeast Asia. So this has very much been a part of my life. I'll come back on short-term trips. I call it short-term trips. Funny, looking at it backwards, here to the States, looking for vision partners. And the connection is not a one-time handout. It is a partnership, a sewing back into each other. And I've really been excited to kind of implement a bunch of ideas that I've found really helpful in the God Ask. Have you guys ever heard of the God Ask by Steve Shadrach? I know Steve and I have talked about this before.
No, I haven't.
No, one of many. Obviously, there's many support raising, friend raising, some would call it. I have, hey everyone, wake up, better, nice to see you. So I really have enjoyed putting into practice some practical things. For example, we have a monthly 15-minute Vision Partners update. We'll all call in from Thailand. It'll be a live, uberconference.com, rings their phones, everybody's live at the same time, and I just give a quick update. It's a real personal touch. Instead of just having these people who are giving their hard-earned money, by the way, to you or to the ministry or to the mission that you're called to, and then never hearing back. If you're going to invest in the stock market, you want to know the ups and downs and how it's growing or failing. So I always like to connect very personally. I know the birthdays of all our vision partners, their children's names. This is important for a relationship because it's the body of Christ sending to the nation. So to me, the basic overall premise, is it biblical? No doubt. You'll see scriptures referring to that. Is it relational based? Most definitely. And that's, I think, what we're getting at today. So
awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. And again, for those of you who are called overseas, we may touch on some practical things today, or we definitely will. But I think the bigger thing is you need to continue in obedience to pursue the calling that God has given you, wherever it may be. Like Mike said, it could be within your own zip code, and don't downplay that, putting overseas Christian workers on a pedestal because they simply buy a plane ticket and move to a different geographical coordinate. The point is, we're all called within our place in obedience, and specifically for those who are going to go overseas, this is going to be an issue that's going to come up, and I think through relationship, it's going to be a powerful connection. So sorry to rant and rave about that.
That's right. I can tell that's really close, and it's been a and it's been a great part of what you've been able to do and how you've been able to function. That's what we need to hear. We definitely need to hear.
Well,
Awesome.
it really has been helpful to connect. I mean, seriously, I'll stay up from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. Thailand time, making phone calls throughout the North America, connecting with people who financially sow into Within Reach Global every single month. Hey, how you doing? Most of the time I'll just get a voicemail, but I'll just say, hey, I'm thinking about you, praying for you, love you guys, so appreciate your giving. These are powerful things that are going to continue a longevity of not donations only, but again, holding of the rope, as you may be down in a different place that has a gold mine of souls. By the way, I just wanted to pause there, and I'm not quite sure how Josh's internet is. He's actually here in the States looking for vision partners, fundraising. I've been noticing a lot of people donating to him into our ministry. It's been exciting for me because it's a real success story. I'm not sure, buddy, how your internet is. He keeps popping in and out, but if you wanted to come in for like a couple minutes and give a little update of practical things that you've found helpful, feel free. Chat me in the sidebar here because the call-in button is closed at the moment. All right. Craig, you had...
Well, Steve, did you want to... I wonder if Steve had anything to add about his experience with
not being in the square there.
Yeah. It's good to see Steve there.
My 2 cents, I don't know. I think everything y'all said, especially, like I haven't read the God Ask. I've been through what they call Support Raising Boot Camp by Steve Shadrach.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I've gone through Kingdom Come Training, which is a very similar system of support raising or partnership development, as they call it, which I found far more helpful with the Kingdom Come Training because they will provide ongoing accountability and coaching throughout the entire process from start to finish.
Wow. That's great.
It's just not training from the end and then you go off and try to figure out on your own. They actually require, and sort of like a contract you sign with them, you have to stick with them until you're 100%. And they've got experienced people that walk with you through the whole thing. So, David said, don't be afraid. In truth, it is scary. It's scary for most people.
Sure.
And most people tremble when they think of asking someone that has to do with money. But it comes down to perspective, as I believe David said at the very beginning. First, your perspective. It's not about you. It's about what God's called you to do.
Amen.
You.
Yeah.
And if you
I'll
have the
great
ability,
props for that.
Yeah, but they're mine.
That's right.
Okay. Well, you can share.
So if you can share the vision clearly, and you really believe in it, then it really becomes about supporting the vision. You're just the tool God's using. And I know David's done and I've done the relational part of support raising or partnership development. If you have to go and paint the bridge every year, yes, that gets very tiresome. And I know people who do that. But if you're able to work more over time toward getting monthly partners or vision partners, as David calls them, those are the ones that really limit the need to repaint the bridge constantly.
Yes.
You're buying high quality.
Well, this is. Sorry, Steve, to cut you off there. You're a little bit far from the microphone, so I can't quite hear when you're finished there. But some people would say, I hate the idea of fundraising or raising support. Is that my only funding option? Just to touch again on what Steve was saying, and I think we all alluded to, I think a number of people, especially who you have a relationship already, find it quite endearing when you would sit down to coffee, your treat, by the way, not theirs, and say, hey, but beforehand, you call them in advance. This is something that I've learned, and I have found it very beneficial. I will set up 2-3 weeks in advance before I'm stateside. If you're already stateside preparing to go, even better, because people are already near you. Say, I want to share with you 3 things. What God's doing in my life, in our ministry, and some financial needs that we have. Be upfront. Don't trick people or coerce them into coming to a Starbucks meeting with you and then, by the way, I need cash. But I've found that people find it very endearing when you say, hey, Jim and Teresa, my vision partners, I've known you guys for 25 years. Would you jump on board our vision partner monthly prayer and support team for, and then name an amount for $100 a month, and then give them time to think about and then follow up. Is it awkward? There is definitely a silence in between the question, and let it remain, let the awkwardness sink in, and let God work on their hearts. Perhaps they're going to say, no, we're just unable to do that, but we'll join for $50 a month. And because really they love you, they love what God has called you to do. And when you don't show that I'm ashamed to be seeking financial help for the vision that this is God's heart, I think they'll find it very endearing, rather coming across like a beggar more as an advocate. So.
Good. Now, in the greater world of serving the Great Commission, is every worker going to go out and have to raise funds in order to go to do their work, or is there going to be another funding model that could possibly kick in and operate differently?
I think Mike and Steve both have encountered this more than me when it comes to the business as mission, or BAM model. Tent making, others might call it. There is a difference, but slight. You guys have thoughts about that? What are other methods besides just fundraising solely?
Yeah, well, as I look at the question, I was just thinking about a friend of mine who actually was a former board member of ours, and he moved to, he had the opportunity, he was working with Hewlett Packard here, and had the opportunity to, they asked him to go to Hewlett Packard's office in Singapore. And, it was just a really neat deal, because as I actually went to visit him about a year later, and it was really great because, he really looked at his opportunity in Singapore as sort of a, he had a job, but he had all these Singaporeans that are around him, that he was working with. And so reached out very effectively to, some younger guys that he was working with. And, I guess, when we sort of compared notes, he was at least as effective in ministry as I was, and yet, he had a full-time job and had to raise no dollars, to really to do his ministry. So, so certainly I think if you have the right attitude in any job, it doesn't even have to be in an overseas job, again, you can be super effective in reaching out to people who God has given you that are around you. And so, that's at least one model. The other one that comes to mind in particular that I'm at least sort of brainstorming with some others about is, there's a local ministry here in Denver area, and I think it's called Global Connections International, and they've got projects kind of all around the world that they're doing. And one of their board members had already, I think, gotten into, he was a commercial real estate guy. And so they had talked about really kind of some of their board members set up a separate LLC that did sort of like a kingdom-minded investment sort of thing. And I don't know all the details, but, they had asked some kind of local donors who were wealthier to contribute X number of dollars in an investment where they get a return on their investment, but then a certain percentage of that goes back to the ministry. I think they bought an office building here locally, and so some of the profit from that office building, comes back to the ministry, which again reduces the amount that they would have had to raise otherwise. I mean, if the money's coming in one way or the other, if you can have that, let's just say it's whatever, 50 grand coming in as investment, return. well, then that 50 grand can go to other things on the ground. So I like that idea. I'm not done anything with it at this point. I'm just sort of learning, but that's at least another idea that sort of answers that question. So
it seems like if you bring the best of your creativity to the scene and say, let's imagine some possibilities here, and let's get some smart people in the room who who can look beyond and what we've always done. There's probably a lot of ways a lot of solutions we can come up with. Not that we have to outthink perhaps biblical guidance and say, well, I just don't like that. I mean, I'm hoping that I'm not motivated by that as much as, hey, we just see a number of ways and possible ways, rather than just feel like, oh, I can only do it this way.
I like how you zoned in on that word creativity as well. I heard that as well. Let's not only be forced into the traditional route that we've usually had to take. There are many different opportunities to look for funds. I also would like to delineate that there is a difference between those who are going to be overseas as expats and those who are going to be global Christian workers, perhaps more specifically in a target area where unreached people groups are. Now, businessmen and women may not end up in those scenarios because it might be more rural than urban. Regardless of the thing that God has called you to do, yes, use creativity. Look for a team. Don't try to go at it yourself, because that's just going to be pretty tiresome, and you'll probably get burned out. Spending most of your time back in North America or your home country looking for people to support the ministry. But the whole point is, this is not a get-rich-quick scheme in China. For my specific history,
right.
that one never panned out for me. That's not what it's about. It's being able to free up the person who is called of God to go cross geographical boundaries, cultural boundaries, ethnic boundaries, to do the thing that God has called them to do, namely to leave a Christian impact upon that culture, upon that society, community. And so be creative, look for a team. Check out the God Ask. Steve Shermer mentioned a couple other resources there. Maybe we'll put the links here on the side. So yeah, great questions, guys, and good thoughts about that. Steve, you look like you got something here. Oh, are you putting the link up there?
Put in the link, yeah.
Well,
okay.
I was going to add to, let me just put this in real quick so I don't forget.
So as Steve's doing that, oh, I'm sorry to cut you off there, Steve. I was just going to say, if you're wondering why the seat is closed here and unavailable to call in, because we're kind of on a timeline here and wanted to get through a number of different thoughts and ideas. We could go on forever on this topic, but just wanted to keep it kind of focused and moving along for Craig's thoughts as well. But sorry, Steve, you had something there?
I was going to add to what Mike said. There's definitely people like in Singapore, or not Singaporean, but his friend who went to Singapore. And, people like that, I would say, in their ability to be effective in this ministry, sometimes they get tied up with working. So you have to be very intentional and have some kind of accountability system set up, or he may just have the personality to do that. But I don't think that's most. If you're called to be, you could say, a worker through a traditional organization like ours, then I've been challenging people, take a hybrid approach. Go be the English, go be the engineer, go be the business person, and but at the same time, develop a team of partners back home, vision partners back home, because I find, and I know not everyone has the same experience, but a lot of our stronger prayer partners are also our vision partners, with the exception of a few. Because we're constantly on their mind. They just believe in the vision. And if they have the ability to be like Mike's friend, maybe later on they develop a business and it becomes very financially successful, and they don't technically need the support at that time. But then all the vision partners that they have, they keep them, would be my recommendation. And you leverage the funding. for other things. You don't have to keep padding the pocket, so to speak, to make yourself richer. You've already got that source, but now you've already developed those partners, and now they can be involved in more than just helping you. They can go beyond that, and it goes into the ministry at that point, moving forward.
Amen. And realizing that you are a conduit. That's the whole point of this conversation. When it comes to finances, I realize that we are a conduit for hard-earned money to be sown into kingdom ventures. And I like this question too. By the way, Craig is the kind of, shall I let the cat out of the bag here, mastermind behind these great questions.
Wow.
I like this question. Yeah, well, I refer to you as the mastermind. I didn't spice it up with any adjectives like I usually am generous with. But specifically for this particular conversation, because I know there are a number of people there at Liberty, or perhaps they'll be watching the replay. I feel called to missions, but I have a lot of school debt. Are missions orgs going to turn me away because of my debt? Or even a broader question, should I go with a bunch of school debt? My personal opinion, you got the whole rest of your life ahead of you. Build a foundation of support, a foundation of direction, take perspectives on the world Christian movement, zone in on what God is wanting you to do. Go on a couple short-term ventures, but I would say I would not walk into a long-term career global worker situation with debt. I think it's a little bit unhealthy. That's just my thoughts. What about you guys?
Yeah, I think as to the question of our mission organization is going to turn me away, I've not polled them all, of course, but I would sort of say that as to that question, it's probably about a 50-50. 50% probably will. David, I had just told you about recently the opportunities that we're having to do maybe some Bible translation work in Sichuan province. And so I've had a lot of conversations with Wycliffe and trying to become at least somewhat of a, I don't want to say expert, but at least kind of know, what that work is about.
Yes.
And
before diving in head first, right?
Yeah, that's right. And I know in terms of staff, if we were to say, hey, would it be possible for us to join your staff, if we had any kind of debt, and it's not just school debt, they wouldn't allow us to, I don't think, to do it. And so and I would just second, David, on the other part, what you said, which is, yeah, particularly if you're going overseas, I think, the school debt, that's going to be a tough one to be able to. I mean, it's just going to be not only, you
don't want it to bog you down for the next 2 decades, right?
Yeah. I was just going to say it's gonna really bog you down, and and plus, I mean, as in kind of my opening statement on this thing about fundraising, there are, on one hand, I do believe that what Hudson Taylor said, which is God's work done in God's way never lacks God's provision, right?
Amen.
On the other hand, there's just a lot of ups and downs, and there's even been times we've had a lot of experience. There's times we may, go without a paycheck, and then we make that money up and get paid later. And if you've got these regular payments you're having to make, it's just it's not guaranteed salary, I guess.
Yeah.
And so that would make it hard too, in my mind, to have this debt. And it's just an extra thing you're having to always kind of worry about, and it's going to kind of bog you down. So,
By the way, sorry, go ahead, Steve.
I agree that the ideal situation is no debt. I completely agree with that. But from experience, when my family and I went to China, we had debt, significant amount.
So you're one of those.
Yeah, we were one of those. And it wasn't necessarily all our fault either.
Sure.
My wife, the first time with the IMB, she had school debt. And so one thing I learned, just want to go if you don't have to go with that. But at the same time, there is the element of if you're convinced God's called you to something, as Mike said, if you're doing it God's way, you're not going to lack God's vision. So there is an element that God knows, even when He calls, that you have that.
Yes.
And I do believe personally, just because I experienced it, that He will provide the way. It didn't make it necessarily easy. Now, thankfully for us, I think living in Asia actually made it a little bit easier to pay it off than living in the States.
Yeah.
In that respect.
Living expenses,
living expenses were less.
Yeah, exactly. You know, when you're living in a developing place at the time, it's
just eat at the noodle shop every day.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Steve was sucking down those over the bridge rice noodles. I think the point is here. Let's not make excuses and work ourselves trying to trick God into thinking, well, God, maybe I am not called. If you are sensing a call of God, by all means, start now making preparations. On the other hand, don't be stupid. Make wise decisions about finances, even when it comes to your retirement. Are you taking a portion of perhaps your very menial budget and sowing it into the future? There's a website. I can't remember if it's like Missionary Millionaire or millionairemissionary.com. Definitely not a get rich quick scheme, but this guy lived on a very low budget for many, many years in Southeast Asia. And every year faithfully, even when it hurt, put money away. And at the end of his career overseas work, he was not in need and didn't go off the field just completely wrecked and ruined, like many people actually have a tendency to do. On that topic, another one of Craig's questions, I kind of hacked it by putting it in the chat bar myself. What are some habits I can start today that will help me stay on track to serve the kingdom in the future? I think that's the whole point we're getting at here.
Good one.
Is fundraising going to be difficult? Sure. There's going to be an element that is awkward, that is difficult, that may not always work out as you expected, but start now with healthy habits. You guys got some ideas for those?
I think being responsible with spending and learning what it takes to live on a budget when it's not, when you've got enough, so that when things get tighter, you've already built that habit, and having a good view of a healthy fear of debt and overspending your means is going to be very beneficial. I mean, I can talk from our own personal experience, just that there's just that nagging sense of lack of peace when you are continually dipping into that line of credit, and it's not a good long-term solution. The bleed has to stop eventually, but if you're going to stay healthy. And so we kind of learned the hard way just how important that is. And so being able to, even within college, kind of have a very realistic and smart approach to the whole approach to how you're going to finance a college education. Or is it going to happen in 4 straight years? Is it going to happen full time? Is it are they going to, how are you going to spend your summers? Having a good plan that you can feel good about, and where the numbers actually make sense. And I think that Jesus talked, if you're going to go out and build a tower, calculate the cost. Otherwise, you're going to get halfway through, and the people are going to see the rubble that you left behind. That on that note, sounds like it's the opposite of faith, right? We walk by faith, not by God will provide. But even as I was thinking, as you were talking earlier, the second temptation of Jesus was to stand up on the edge of the temple and jump off and know that the angels are going to catch him when he fell down. And the devil used scripture on that. Well, we can jump off of some very precarious places financially in the name of ministry, or in the name of doing, following God's call, if we have not been wise, if we haven't thought it through. And I think it's just seeking out, maybe another one of the habits is seeking out some good wisdom from older people who have been through that same track, or who, can give you spiritual guidance. and
Yeah.
say, "This is what I'm thinking about doing. What do you think?" And this is what
Yes.
the numbers look like. Look like it's going to be feasible. Those are some of the habits that I'd recommend.
I like that. And Walt says, I'm working on a tent
Yeah.
right now. I think he's talking about a tent making situation. He's probably not putting up a little fort for his children. There's a building in Southwest China in Kunming City that was probably about 30-40% done. And it was right in the center of the city for over a decade, the whole time I was there. And they put up this huge sign that said in Chinese something to the effect of, don't start what you can't finish. And basically shaming the guy who ran out of cash. And it was a 30-story building that was left 30% done for over a decade. I know we're touching on a lot of very practical and financial, and perhaps it sounds more like an investment blab or a financial blab than it usually does. That's why I kind of want to bring it back to the reality of God's call. If you are called of God to go overseas, to do some sort of cross-cultural missions work, do not think of excuses to get out of that, but be wise in your response to his call. I know we have a few other questions. How do you guys? By the way, I want to just pause here and say, what do you think about this conversation so far? Is it going to be beneficial to young people, to any demographic really, who are planning on going overseas?
I think so, absolutely. We are in a situation right now where we have to vacate the room where we are.
Oh, I see.
Because it's we ran out of time on our reservation. So, but you're certainly welcome to keep the conversation going.
Okay. Let's keep the conversation going here. My battery is almost dead, and I need to change locations just real quick as well. It'll take me about 2 minutes. Hey, all right, Mike.
Okay.
Do you got a moment here, Mike? Do you mind? I'm just going to go ahead and switch my location and plug in. All right. I will be back in just a second, and maybe we can talk about a couple more little details, and feel free to keep going with whatever you got. I'll be right back here, okay?
Okay, and you just had that question about habits. So while you're doing that, I'll just make my comments about that as well.
Excellent. I'll look at the replay then. I'll just be right back here.
So the question, and we can put it up again actually, which I thought was a good one. What are some habits I can start today that will help me stay on track? And I think what Craig mentioned was good. Obviously, they're at Liberty University, and this is kind of an opportunity to counsel college students. And so it's, I would say that things that Craig said were true of people who are in college, but then also, I have friends who, in fact, there's just a guy that used to live up the street from us, and he's 45 years old and was a structural engineer and felt like God was calling. And so, sometimes God calls us into cross-cultural ministry, at various stages of our lives, right? So in terms of what are some habits that I can start today, not only would I say on the financial ones, but I would also say, things like spending regular time in God's word, spending regular time in prayer, and I would even include scripture memory, into that as well. And so some of the habits that I think that we can begin to start are being able to hear God as we spend time in God's word and time in prayer. And certainly that habit, what we call kind of the quiet time or the time with God, time alone with God habit is good, because if you feel like he's calling you, you want to make sure, right, that call's coming from God. And number two, this thing I mentioned about the Golden Gate Bridge at the beginning, that's a job that you are able to do if it's God, if God's the one who's who's calling you to do it.
That's right.
Right. So
it's not just you building the ship, right?
Yeah, that's right. And so, I mean, if God's if God's the one doing it, he'll get the job done. But you just, I guess my point is, you want to make sure that call's coming from God, and not just something that you want to do, because you want to do it, or you think it's cool, or you feel like that's what Christians are supposed to do, or whatever. So I guess, and that's just another habit that we could have, is just regular time in God's word, regular time in prayer, and boy, that will help you stay on track
exactly.
for to serve the kingdom in the future.
Cannot discount those aspects, right?
That's right.
Craig and Steve just messaged, we're done for the day. No place for us to get back on. But let's do it. Okay. Well, anyway, so basically they're in Liberty University, and I know there's going to be a number of people on tomorrow, the next day. We've got a number of scheduled blabs. These are some great thoughts, Mike. Yeah, I mean, I really appreciate you jumping on. I didn't even ask Mike until like the last second.
I know. It worked out great.
Yeah. But on this topic, I mean, it's kind of like a flow, I think. We've got a number of upcoming ones. We're going to be talking tomorrow about short-term missions. Are you doing like a little drum beat over there, or what? We're going to be talking about short-term missions. You guys can subscribe to these. The next day, we're going to be talking about singlehood and missions. And for me, I spent 7-8 years alone as a single man in China. So not an easy task, but we're going to be tackling those thoughts. Then we're going to be talking about everyday life of a missionary. What is tangible look at what it actually looks like. And then Mike and I, who's here next to me, are going to be co-hosting this one here, a conversation about all things missions. We'll see how people call in with their thoughts and see where we go from there. The following week, we're doing another one with a guest of ours. So basically, go check out either on blab.im/Mike Falkenstein, I'm sorry, Missions Mike, or /David Joannis, or /Steve Shermer. You'll see upcoming scheduled posts, and the short-term missions one should be good. Looking forward to that. So that should be really good, because obviously there are a lot of different perspectives about that, and including are they really all that helpful to those that you're trying to serve, or is it actually more of a Christian tourism kind of thing? So that'll be a good one. As long as we could go to the beach afterwards and hang out, right?
Yeah, that's right.
There are definitely some pros and cons, and we'll just be looking at all aspects, tackling those ideas. But today's topic, Missions Blab, money and missions. If you missed the whole live thing, I know Walt was on here. Most of you guys were on here the whole time, but it'll be available on the same link for the replay. And I'm looking forward to connecting with Walt, hearing more about that tent making, or that tent he's putting up. Tent making opportunity, it sounds like. For me, I have Joanna's Consulting on the side. I kind of do some creative consulting, website construction, photography. Awesome. Very cool. Nice. And so Mike, you're awesome, man. Thanks for jumping on here with me.
Yeah, you bet. My pleasure.
Yep. And by the way, you guys, stay tuned, because Mike, Steve, and I have been talking about the expansion of the Missions Blab and how we could kind of create some sort of Christian collective, perhaps a number of different hosts on a daily show with different hosts on different topics. We're kind of excited for how it's going to grow, right, Mike? And we got to put our heads together about that. But
definitely. Yeah, I think there's a lot of pretty neat opportunities, actually. So
maybe Walt can use this as his second tent making opportunity. The host of the Missions Blab.
That's right.
Although I don't know that that's benefits are out of the world.
That's right. I was going to say, I don't know that that's quite a paying position at this point, but
yeah, exactly.
A nice volunteer position.
Yeah. Well, anyway, you guys, thanks for being on here. Let's see. Anna, didn't get to meet you, but look forward to seeing you again. I think you're there at Liberty. So, get your friends interested. And I want to have a more kind of engaging time perhaps tomorrow and see how it goes, thoughts on people's thoughts on short-term missions. But yeah, I think we got some good stuff, and blessings all. Mike, we'll talk pretty soon here, huh?
Okay, great. Sounds good.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. All right, Walt. See ya.